Thanks,
March
Matt.
2nd, and this is the Legislative Committee meeting. We'll have a call to order. I don't know, Jolie, do you take attendance or should I take attendance? I can just kind of look to see who's here. We have Jennifer Lucier is here. We have Anna Wittig is here. Brian's here. Susan Dillner, Yankee is here, and then we have. I'm not sure. Is Matthew Faulkner? What capacity is Matthew?
Matt's here to support the live stream, so
Okay.
he's not like officially attending the meeting.
Okay, so this is tech support.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and so
and thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I just so anyhow, so that's who we have here. This is a time for any public comment since we're a public meeting. We had provided a call-in number and a participation code. Jolie, do we see if there's anybody has called in?
I can check in and it looks like Jolie was there for a minute, but she may have had to step away. So we could check back in on the public comment.
Okay. So then the next matter, we will circle back if anybody is waiting. So let's just make that clear so they don't go. We'll go back in a fairly quick fashion. As far as the legislative matters go, the bills of interest, we just had a brief informal discussion. And just to set the stage, the way it is done is that Brian and the legislative liaison identify bills that have a particular hook to the special education community. Not exclusively, but sometimes there's like a bleed over, like there could be something that's in favor of like some kind of change to reading, and that's going to not only be for special ed, but for the students at large. And what we do is we kind of follow those bills. And when they get past a little bit more of the wishful thinking stage and into the, like, let's, put some meat on the bones type of stage, what we will do is we will look at them and we will decide whether or not we want to comment or whether we just want to, oppose or support or whatever kind of reaction we want to have. Of course, it's since we would be speaking on behalf of the SAC, what we do is we go to the executive committee. So the legislative committee doesn't do anything unilaterally. We pass it on to the executive committee for their okay, and then what we'll do is then we write it up and we send it. So that's just generally how we operate. What Brian has done so far is Brian has pulled together a number of bills that he believes of special interest to our special ed community. What I did before the last full meeting is I had taken those that had been highlighted and I put them together into like an inventory of bills that require special attention. I had sent that out, but I had it done. It wasn't sent to the full group, but this morning I decided, let me just send it just in case people hadn't seen it. So I'd sent that out. And that's where we are. And the next step that we have to do is we're going to have to determine what bills from this point on are A, to be added, and B, pursued further. And Ryan is still there. And I'm going to confess, Brian, I'm going to lean heavily on your legislative support to keep us posted on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things too, Jeff and everyone, is that we had talked about at the larger full SAC meeting the potential of putting together a one-pager off of the annual report that would be the SAC's maybe we want to call it legislative priorities, or maybe we want to call it, priorities in special education in general for the legislature to share with Ed Committee, maybe even Higher Ed Committee, Children's Committee, and so forth, that would just in a real succinct way with some visuals and graphics identify where the priorities are for the council and how that may influence the, some of the bills moving through the process. If that is something that you want to do, we can mock up a draft for you based on the annual report that was just finalized and send that. And even we could use it as a template for future legislative sessions as well.
And I think that's a great idea. Rather than identifying a singular bill and doing public commentary when that particular bill is set up, we can ahead of time let the various committees know what we're interested in. So if a bill comes across their desk, they can actually pay special attention to it. So I like that. It's kind of like the headlights on a car lighting the highway ahead of going rather than waiting till you hit the pothole. So I like that.
I always love your analogies, Jeff. That's perfect. Well said.
Anyhow, so I think we should do that. Brian, let me ask you now, is there anything that we need to look at now that's right on the iron right now being forged that we should really look at right now that needs our immediate attention?
I don't, like I said, I've been forwarding the bills to you, and there hasn't been many special ed directed ones, with a lot of detail in them at this point in time. We've been responding as a department right now, and I know the commissioner, for example, testified yesterday, as well as several other entities and agencies to the Education Committee during the public hearing. There was SB 1093, which is an act implementing the recommendations of the Juvenile Justice Policy and Oversight Committee concerning education. So again, nothing specifically around special education there, but we know that population for students that are identified with special education takes it requires a specific focus and a differentiated approach for support there. So we're just paying attention closely there to ensure that the population of students needs are met. And then there's SB 1094, which I was talking a little bit about before you opened the meeting, with the implementation of reading models and programs. Again, not specifically special education, except in the fact that all students, even students with IEPs, would be this would impact their curriculum across the state. So again, we're paying very close attention to the language there. So there were a variety of bills, additional an act concerning school resource officers. So our student service department, was weighing in on that. Act concerning school nurses and some of the requests for professional development and certification in those areas. But as far as content to look at and specifically respond to, the one special education area specific one was related to staffing. There was a proposal, HB 6758, which concerns staffing for roles in the department. And one of the areas that was highlighted was the special education and monitoring activities. The language was a little different because it mentioned evaluators to evaluate the implementation of IEPs across the state, and so it's falling under that category of general monitoring and supervision. And the bill prescribed no less than 5. Or it might have been 4. I have to double check my notes. Sorry, I'm just going on recollection. Individuals or evaluators that would be work under the department and report to the commissioner on activities related to special education.
I have a question. Well, so thank you for that.
Excuse me, Brian, can you please just repeat what bill number that was?
Yes, House Bill 6758.
Thank you.
And Jolie, circling back to you, did we have anybody that had signed up for on call to call in or any public participation?
No, my VPN knocked off at the same time. Sorry about that. I had to re-sign on to the network. That's why I disappeared. So no, there is no one on the public line.
Oh, I thought you were going into the refrigerator to get breakfast for all of us.
I'm all about pizza, and you haven't given me an update. So
I'm sorry about that. Brian, can I ask you a question? one of the hot topics that I think is being discussed, and I think it has to do with us a bit, is the school resource officers. So what was your understanding? Because I know that in fact, I didn't get a chance to read it, but in one of the local Hearst publication had an article about legislation, SROs, and I guess there was something going on that the people from CCT had commented, and I guess there was some pushback from some of the committee members on that. What's the status of the SRO thing?
Yeah, so that's Senate Bill 1095, an act concerning school resource officers. And our response is, while the department supports the transparency in posting the memoranda of understanding, this would be a memoranda of understanding between the school district and the resource officers that they hire. There was information to publicly post that. And additionally, specifically around adding procedures for restraint of students, their use of firearms in school-based arrests. We're unable to support the utilization of other staff, especially mental health. There's school counselors, school social workers, and school psychologists for being reassigned from their roles to do the duties that would typically be assigned to the school resource officer. So what that means is in the bill, they were asking and saying that those school psychologists, social worker, and counselors could do the duties of a school resource officer. We were typical duties that they've been assigned. The restraint and seclusion. So as you probably all know, we collect data on restraint and seclusion of students from all of our schools and districts. If a district hires an individual in the role of a school resource officer and they work for the public school district, then they are required to report a restraint falling into that category, as we know, restraint and seclusion based on those guidelines and parameters. If a school district contracts with either the local police department or some other outside entity, and there is an incident where that individual has to restrain a student for a particular reason, that is not reported to us through our mechanism of restraint and seclusion. It doesn't fit it doesn't fit the definition and criteria. Now, schools still have responsibilities to share that information, but it's separate from our data collection process. So that's been some of our feedback around that, Jeff. I don't know if there's questions or.
Well, the question I had
additional
then from what you just said, if I understand correctly, so if an internal security person, an employee of the school district were to do restraint, and that's reported, but if an external security group did it, that wouldn't be reported for the same physical act?
For our restraint and seclusion system that we have set up, correct. Think about it. If a police officer, so school-based employees are required to be trained in crisis de-escalation and intervention. A police officer is not. Like, the police officer has their training that they do to maintain the safety of the public. So when an officer comes in and puts hands on a student, it's not a restraint that an educational staff do to keep students safe as a last resort for that student. So that's the difference between contracting through and it, versus I'm District A, I am hiring you, you work for our district, you're an employee of the district.
So I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So, say, because right now, if there's 4 incidents of restraint and seclusion within a 20-day or less school period, you have to have a PPT, etc. So what would happen if, you had a student that was on the cusp of that, and then they did have a restraint, such as, something from like a police officer? Would the CSDE provide guidance that there should be referrals still if the student still needed to have something like that done?
It would be a separate category. we wouldn't even be informed of it necessarily.
You might have the same physical act and the same outcome, but it's not going to be reported in the same manner.
I can't answer if it would be the same physical act like that, because the school resource officers have a different role than the educational staff. So we would need specifics around the usage of that, but yeah, I mean, the full receive questions from time to time to say, you know, that a school resource officer or an external, you know, they're not operating on behalf of the school, they're operating on behalf of their organization. And I don't have data on whether that happens or how frequently it happens. I'm just saying what we pointed out as concerns within the department based on this bill. Restraint, like when folks think of restraint, I think they automatically go to, I've been trained in CPI or PMT and de-escalation, and I know to use these strategies to, as only as a last resort, be able to maintain the safety of a student and or the staff. A police officer isn't operating under those same parameters necessarily.
So I'm
And I'm
trying
not
to figure
saying a
out
school
how
resource
this,
officer is a police officer, but I'm just
Yeah.
using that as an analogous situation.
so then how are the rights of students with disabilities clearly protected and defined in those situations where we know that restraint is only supposed to happen, XYZ, this is when it's supposed to happen or not happen. And then you have an outside person or the school resource officer contracted, and is it like the rules are different or just how you're collecting the information? Like, how are we going to make sure students with disabilities are not disproportionately being affected by hands-on for these people?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jen. I mean, that would be the responsibility of the building principal, the local building administration, how the school resource officer's job description, their duties. Are they a member of the crisis team? Are they not? Are they responding individually to students or are they not? There's a variety of different things. And I think what this bill, the language in this bill talks about posting that information about those agreements and exactly making it clear to the public what the individual is charged to do within the school.
I feel like we might have stuff to say about this bill. I don't know. I have a lot of concerns because, even without the piece about extra school resource officers, our students are already disproportionately affected discipline-wise, restraint and seclusion-wise, and to not have very specific parameters on how reporting is going to happen, it gives me a lot of concern. That's my 2 cents. Sorry.
Susan, your hand's up.
Sorry. So my hand is about previous stuff, but I agree with Jennifer that we should draft just even a few, or Jennifer, Jeff, what do you think? A few lines of language about this bill and about students with special education. They're making sure that their rights are being respected. Brian, I don't know what you would think what that wording is, because I do think that's more than just handing them the page of what our priorities are. You already are doing that. Are you already doing that? Is the commissioner already saying, what are we doing about students with special education, their rights when it comes to seclusion and restraint?
Well, this is not a bill about seclusion and restraint. I just want to be clear about that. It's about school resource officers and their duties in the buildings. Okay. Where there is language in there that talks about the procedures, like adding specificity around added procedures for restraint of students. If that is like within the school resource officers, And it
Right.
also says use of firearms and school-based arrests. So those are the three categories that they said needed to be specifically included in the memoranda. So we need to talk about that, the differentiation of the definition of restraint
Okay,
in those two different entities, whether they happen in school or not, whether they happen on a playground, out in the community. Restraint means different things in education than it does in those under those different organizations. You know, when you put a person, you know, if like a school-based arrest, you know, if you you know, once the officer puts hands on a student and puts them in handcuffs, that is a restraint. That's not something that's reported in our restraint collections. That was an emergency procedure for students. You know, there's been a lot of legislation proactively in Connecticut to ensure that restraint is not part of an IEP. It's not included in a behavior intervention plan. The training that's involved with those that have to, you know, that have to utilize these procedures. But it, you know, to Jen's point initially, if there's concerns around that, you know, you can write to the, you know, and add and weigh in there to say that there is a concern, you know, for the school resource officer's actions within the context of the school for students with disability to make sure that their rights are adhered to. You know, but in crisis situations, when police come in, there's a, you know, there's a chain of, there's sort of a, I forget the term because it's been a while since I've been in school, but there's a chain of command that is turned over in those emergency situations to the authorities.
okay. I
So
don't want to,
I'll-
I
go
don't want to
ahead.
move on to another bill unless you guys are done with this one. Jeff?
The only
have a
thing I was
question.
saying is, I guess the concern is whether or not we feel that we should comment to have interventions that are conducted by SRO that are similar to those that might be restrained, to have those counted towards the 4 of 20.
Anna, I see your hand up
Yes.
too.
Yes, I don't know. To me, it's pretty scary. I couldn't agree more with Jennifer, and Susan said the same thing. And I do think that there should be some sort of a language that it has to be reported somewhere. You know, I understand it's not maybe state ed, but this is about students. This is about special education students where their disability does impact their behavior. And you know, that we hear all the time about traumatizing incidents that happen. I do think that we should advocate for some language, just specify not just the role, because it says here statement of purpose, to specify duties of school resource officer, but just the reporting structure of that.
Brian, what was that bill number? 605, what was it?
Senate
1090.
Bill 1095.
1095, right? It was 6095, okay, 1095.
Yeah, what might be helpful too is because there is required reporting, but it is also, you know, confidential information for the student and family. But it is also reported and collected when there are school-based arrests. That's something that's followed closely by the JPOC, and I know a lot of our advocacy organizations too, as well as the school districts. So again, I think what it will come down to is the definition of restraint.
Well,
And
I mean, the definition of restraint is anytime you're preventing somebody from moving. So if they are, like you said, when they put cuffs on a student, yeah, that's a restraint clearly, but it's a restraint even before that. I mean, I don't know, maybe just these images on the news that I see and different programs are in my head. and I kind of want to protect our kids, it's a restraint what they're doing. It's a restraint for us. Why would it be different for them? This is, if we look, if the center is the child, then a restraint is a restraint. And if it's a manifestation of a disability, if the behavior is manifestation of a disability, we all know, we are professionals there, and we all know what the student may do or not do. Does this police officer know that, or resource officer know that, and how is that being managed? And I don't know that that is within that reporting structure for the special ed students specifically.
Yeah, I can, I'm just suggesting that I send you the definitions that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
utilize for reporting what is a restraint, what is not a restraint. And the same thing with seclusion, and how that data are collected. Again, it's a collection, it's our responsibility, a required responsibility through data collection. That doesn't mean that all the points that you're making aren't important and that you can follow up with. I just want to make sure that you have that as a basis, and then understand the kind of the reporting on the other end as well.
Yeah.
And school resource officers mean different things. Like that, many school resources aren't active police officers. So there wouldn't be an arrest in many of the cases. Some are former, police officers. Some have, different training. So each district would have more information or knowledge around and we would, support, or we don't have any issue or concerns around districts posting their memorandums of agreements with that piece. But there is some language in there that we did respond to, like I said, especially around the role of the related service folks in that.
Yeah.
Not that the related service individuals don't have a role in supporting the student, but in this particular case, they made it interchangeable with the school resource officer duties, which may or may not be the case.
So, I mean, our school resource officer, I assume not, from what I'm understanding from this conversation, they're not required to have training that we are all required to have, the PMT or whatever, the restraint.
They could.
They could, but they're
Yeah,
not required.
It's different. It's different. So if they're part of a school safety crisis team and they're employed by the district, they're required to have that training and knowledge and information.
Well, is there a way to make them required as a school crisis team?
Yeah, that's a question I don't know, Anna. I don't know if they, if they are. Again, the districts, again, the superintendent would have the purview of, additional staff or hiring additional staff. So a lot of it depends on what that individual is asked to do. I know some schools hire resource officers to just be present outside of the building and, be, or in the building, but again, aren't working with students directly.
Right. I mean,
whereas others, we had, like back when I was in district, our school resource officers were hired by our district, went through training, were seen by the students as members of the staff. And that people that they trusted and that they could confide in and all those different pieces. So there's a whole range of, I think, I'm worried about using that term because there's kind of a whole spectrum of, there's a lot of different issues wrapped into one here.
Yeah.
And the main issue of this isn't restraint and seclusion reporting, but it's an important one that you bring up as kind of an ancillary highlight. Like, is it important enough to include that language in here since the term is used?
If it happens in a school, I don't see why it wouldn't be reported as any other restraint.
So Brian, I'm gonna confess, I'm not that familiar with the provision about the mandatory PPT after 4 incidents. And is it possible for you to send me some information on that? And then also
Yeah.
about what the proposal is and the restraint? And I think that what we could do is I'd be happy to kind of just put together a comment of just our concerns, so to speak. So
Sure.
and then I could put something together and I would share it with everybody on the committee and see if they want to add stuff to it, okay? But if I'm just gonna say I'm gonna need some resources as far as backup of some of the stuff you referred to, because I'm confessing that I don't have the information on it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Jeff,
before we,
I'm gonna put in the, are you able to access the chat?
yeah, I think, let me see.
I just dropped guidance in the chat.
Is that, what was that, Jen? Is it the,
2019?
is that the notice to the parents that you
No,
put in
that's,
there?
it's not parental notification. This is like a summary of the guidance in 2019. It has the
Yeah.
definitions. And
Yeah.
then if you go down to the bottom somewhere,
Yeah, it's in there. The link that I put in there too, Jeff, as you're looking, Jen, is that's a PDF PowerPoint of all of the current requirements around reporting and training.
All right, so I printed out. both of
Slide
them.
32, I think, refers to the 4 and 20 4 incidents in 20 days. In slide 33.
Yeah, okay, I see that, yep. All right, so I printed
it's-
out both of those.
Awesome.
It seems like an incident where you, if it gets to the point of escalation where you have to have an officer come to the school, that should be counted. Is that what we're saying? It's saying it's not, that should be counted, because then you would really want that student to be triggered to have a PPT if something like that happens.
Well, I think that if there was a staff member that was doing the restraint, or at least initiating the restraint process, and then they had to call in the police officer for support, it still would have been triggered because the staff person initiated it. Is that what we're saying? But we're saying if it was like initiated by the officer, or an officer is called to doing the restraint. So let's say a kid's just acting out, there's not any restraint, so to speak, as defined above, but then it's the officer that does it, then that should be included. I think that's what we're saying, right?
I think it's going to be challenging for you to describe all of the different scenarios
Yeah.
that could happen.
That,
Right.
I was just gonna say
I
that
would-
because,
Yeah,
yeah,
you might want to approach it around just like kind of what, going back to what Jen said and you all agreed to, is that you want to make sure the legislators are aware and understanding of students with disabilities
mhm,
rights.
mhm.
Under, and then you can be more specific under that of what rights you're speaking about. And I think it is important to understand, when they say restraint, again, calling the use of police in schools is a topic that I don't know that you want to get into in this bill, because they're
Right.
talking about school resource officers, which is different than calling the police to arrest a student. These are
And-
proactive strategies that schools use to keep their buildings safe and to have a resource in the building to be able to provide support. But again, their job descriptions may vary, right? So, but I'm not telling you how to do that. That's just my advice, because I think, it's rereading the bill as it's written now, and then ensuring that there's consideration around students with disabilities. And there's a lot to talk about that
Yes.
outside of this bill that I think is important, but again, we don't know if this bill will have legs, or, so it's at the beginning stages here. So, I'm not sure how much time and attention and effort you want to make here on this particular bill before it moves forward. Having said that, we've talked a lot about as a committee over the years, the lack of understanding or the need for police to understand the different disabilities and how students communicate or lack of communication and how that can present differently in times of crisis or being aware of a student's behavior plan and what adult actions may trigger students in different ways is important too. All of those different pieces are important in the community, but especially in the school if there are incidents happening in the school too. But I'm rambling now at this point.
All right, well, let me take a look at this. I may reach out to some others for some assistance or commentary, and then I'll try to work on that. One of the things we also have to do is set up a schedule, but I just wanted to briefly mention, there's another bill that is it's coming up now. It's Bill 5926, and I will forward that to people. And what it says is they want to amend they want to add a definition for developmental disability into the title of a particular bill to expand the coverage of it. So to expand Medicaid home coverage. I sent an article on this. So what the bill is entitled, an act concerning a definition for developmental disability. That Title I of the general statute be amended to add a definition for developmental disability, and that Title 17A of the general statute to be amended to replace the term intellectual disability with developmental disability, so that this way it could expand Medicaid services to those who might not have who might have just a developmental disability and not necessarily an intellectual disability. So that would impact a lot of the kids who are autistic and are having difficulties and might need some of the services that you might always get on the autism waiver list, but that they have the higher IQ and should not actually ID, but they still need services. That's not so much in the school, but it's in the school in the sense that it's a transitional service, I think. But let me send you guys some more information on that. I'm just springing it on you now. There was an article I saw in the paper and I sent that this morning, but and it just so happens that one of the people that's the sponsor of it is Lucy Dakin, who's a rep from Norwalk. So she's really good with that. So let me send that to you guys for your consideration if that's something that we feel is within our special ed community. All right, so next, the other item then is to set forth the scheduling of meetings going forward. Just to get everybody's thoughts on that.
Jeff, could we just go back to one of the bills that you sent us?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
I'm so sorry. And Jennifer had talked about it. House Bill 6332, an act establishing a special education advisory council, because that's literally what we are. It's not, it doesn't look like it's the Committee on Children. It's Mary Kahn, Representative Mary Kahn, 5th District. So they want to establish a special education advisory council to advise the Department of Education and the State Board of Ed on issues related to special education teacher attrition and ideas for retention, and that it would be comprised of special education teachers. I don't know, Brian, if the commissioner has spoken to them to the fact that we are here already, like we're here. It sounds more like a community of practice for teachers that maybe should be reporting to us or having like someone on our board. It doesn't.
I think, Susan, this is a different charge. They're using the title advisory council, not in the same context of your responsibilities federally. It's specific to the it's another idea or strategy to an attrition, retention, recruitment, having teachers get together and advise the State Department or be involved in those conversations. We do have communities of practice, obviously, and we are working on this as everyone is, but that's how I'm reading this. Not that that they're not aware of the state, the SAC or the differences, but it is an opportunity to clarify, I think, and to perhaps mention that. It's always good too to say, hey, we're here. just like you did last year, and giving that information around that. But this would be a working group tasked with this topic to report back to the State Department and to the legislature.
Okay, it also seems like a group that should be, if we're allowed to amend our bylaws, if this group gets established, I believe someone from that group should have a seat. Do you believe on our council? Or is that's another topic for the future, so that we get that information? And then they know what we are doing, because it's it's part of our priorities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the language
Okay.
again. I know you just read it aloud, but
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is your purview to be able to respond to in any way that you feel is appropriate. Are they asking, like, are members of that committee all teachers, special ed teachers?
The distinguishing feature is that the body be comprised of special education teachers. I just feel by the title that they made it, they don't. I believe that they just need to know that we're here and we're here to help. And even possibly Representative Khan might be a possible legislator on our group, since this is something that Representative Khan has taken under their wing, special education.
Yeah, we've met with her on a few different occasions. She is an active special educator. So she's obviously knowledgeable of the field and the topic. So that
want
would be a
it to be
person that you could reach out to, certainly. I did, when I met with her, I spoke about the advisory council.
Okay.
And let her know about it, let her know about our meetings, and that, you're interested in having a legislative presence there. And so I didn't put her on the spot with any type of a commitment or anything like that, but there's you could absolutely reach out in some way, either through this bill or directly to discuss that with her.
Okay, and that would be membership committee. Okay, I just wanted.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, take it from the framework of I did meet with her upon her request, because when this was before the language was out, I did talk to her about, we do have an advisory council at the state. There is a public school representative on the council, 37 members. So I gave her that backdrop and that information on it. So, but it's that doesn't mean it can't be reinforced in some type of a communication, whether it be written or the feedback from the legislative committee here.
Okay, so that would come from legislative, correct?
Yeah, that piece could, or I'm thinking the executive committee can always reach out to about making sure that the legislature or is aware of, and that you are, rightfully so, advocated to be involved when there are task force groups in special education, that the State Advisory Council have a seat at the table.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. And that,
Sorry.
that those updates, if this is passed and does go through, that is something that I know the Advisory Council would be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, it's very
supporting and
necessary.
contributing to. Yeah.
It's necessary, but we just want to make sure that that everybody's talking to everybody and everybody knows that everybody's around. There's other groups around to help, because otherwise I feel like it's the same way where people are reaching out to groups to seek for their advice rather than reaching out to us. I would love more people to reach out to us. So I'm sure you get calls every day. Thank you, Jeff. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
We
you.
do.
No,
Yeah.
we're good. So the actual language, the proposed language is the general statutes be amended to establish a special education advisory council that is comprised of special education teachers to advise the Department of Education, State Board of Education on issues related to special education teacher attrition and ideas for retention. So it's not having a council including teachers. It seems to be comprised of, and I think I don't know if that means exclusively of teachers or not. So it's kind of like a different.
Sounds like it.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
So it
But
should
But the
be
title
renamed.
in and of itself is, confusing because there is a
Right.
state advisory council for special education. So
Right, right.
if nothing else, it should be noted and or adjusted, I would think.
Yeah, special education.
And
in
like
other
you
words,
said, and then a seat at the table, or them having a seat at our table, or.
I don't know if they would, if it's just special ed teachers that they probably, you could ask, but
Or have Rick
who
be on,
would,
something like that.
you see what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah.
they have, I don't know, it doesn't speak to, I don't think how they would appoint those individuals or how, that's like part of the advisory council. One of the important pieces is who appoints these individuals.
right.
And that's sort of absent at this point. So there's, I know task force have been even passed in previous years that don't get up off the ground because of lack of appointments. So
Okay. And they may want to refer to it as a special education professional advisory council, something like that,
or teacher, yeah, something. I think it's worth Susan responding to, definitely, and reaching out and making a comment. I did, for whatever it's worth, I did before the bill came out, meet with the with the representative and explain the advisory council's role, gave her some resources, shared the website, all those different things.
Okay, cool. So then the next thing to do is talking about the scheduling of future meetings. So,
Jeff, I'm so sorry. I know we're out of time. And I just wanted to bring us to 6097, House Bill 6097. I think it's a house. It's about tuition waivers for paraprofessionals. I mean, we talk a lot about being short-staffed and increasing the pool of candidates for teaching positions. Should we be supporting this? And if we do, I truly recommend that we include language on paraprofessionals employed at private schools be included in this, because we have a lot of paras in private schools, and they would make awesome teachers one day and be shared with public schools with the experience of a private school.
so this
Anna, which bill?
proposal would be, so if you're like
That was 6097.
right, so that was in the materials that I had sent. So if you want to take a look at that. So I guess, so what is this saying, Anna? That this is saying that, so if you're a para, whether you be in public or private, and you would get a waiver of your school tuition if you attended a state college, if you were at the, what is that?
For a degree in education.
They
So
get a
it's
full
really,
ride?
I'm sorry?
Full ride?
That's what it says here, to allow tuition waivers.
That'd be cool.
Wouldn't it though?
Can I apply it retroactively to my daughter who's now at Fairfield U to get her school psychology degree? I'd love to have that waived.
And I mean, I'm not sure they would probably put, I mean, this is a very short one, and it's a good one though.
So what is the thought here for us to potentially comment favorably on that?
Favorably, yes.
And you were saying, Anna, that you would like it to include para educators who work in approved private schools as well.
Correct. Because that really is benefit to both public and private, because we're increasing the pool of teaching candidates. So, this is the experience from a private going into public. Oh.
Yeah, my personal feeling on that. Oops. My feeling on that also is that, as we've talked, and Rick Rousey has made a comment on it as well. Full disclosure, like I said, my daughter is intern as a school psychologist, but she doesn't get paid.
Correct, yeah.
I think that, if you're paying substitute teachers and you're paying paraeducators, and, she's doing this as a necessary portion of her, getting, to become, certified, but not just school psychologists, any of these certified people, I mean, and they're coming in for their internship, pay them at least at the level of the substitute teacher. That's what I would say.
Is, there are schools like we will pay, if somebody comes for student teaching, if we're a site for a student teacher, we will pay, but many times it's the higher ed that will not allow it.
Oh, you're saying, so the school itself, where they're getting their degree, is saying, no, they won't allow them to be paid.
Correct, correct.
What's the reasoning behind that?
Not sure on that one. I mean, I know that the reasoning for DSAP for them is like, no, we want them to focus on school. We don't want them to be working, this and that. And I wonder if it has, if it's the same type of philosophy that they just want focus on the school and getting that degree. The problem is that there is such a shortage nowadays, because why would you go to school, not just bachelor's degree, but you must have master's. Many times you have 6th year or doctoral, make about third of the salary of some of the other professions, and have a really taxing job. Why would people choose to become teachers? We need to entice them.
Anecdotally, I would say, my daughter gets up every morning and she drives. It's not a long drive, but from Norwalk to Fairfield, she's at a Fairfield Middle School, and she's doing the full boat of everything. She's attending PPT, she's doing assessments.
And not getting paid.
She's doing everything, and she's not getting paid. And so in order for her to put gas in the car, in order to get down to Fairfield, she's got a job as a hostess in a restaurant and working in a retail store on weekends and picking up babysitting shifts.
There you go.
So,
and then there's a shortage.
All right, so let's go on to the next thing. Unless there's anything else, let's go on to the topic of when we want to schedule continued meetings. Do we have some input from Brian on that, or Susan, or Jennifer, or anybody here?
We need to look at a schedule where, like, because of the legislative matters, as I mentioned in the email, these meetings are meetings that we would really need Brian most likely to attend. Like last year, we can go on and schedule every 2 weeks. And if we last year, I think we had the routine of scheduling and canceling if we didn't need to meet. But because of the fact that they are the legislative matters, the bills, and we do need Brian, this is kind of why I was specific to a set date. It's easier for him to keep us in mind when he's scheduling meetings on the other end, if he knows we have a specific date. Thursdays were what we did last year. I had a few okays for Thursdays, but then emails started coming in about that may not work for some members. I really need, of course I need the chair in attendance, and of course we need to meet a quorum. So I decided to just table that until we were all together.
Which is fine. So I had
kind of discuss quickly if we can come up with a day that works for us all.
Yeah, I think it's important that we do that we put it so that Brian can make his schedule. So I think, I had put in my book.
Thank you.
I had put in my book the 16th of March, which is 2 weeks from today.
Do you guys have the 16th of March available? I do, but I'm going to be going into.
I do.
Unless we meet late that day, like a 3-ish, which I usually don't meet so late, because some people's end times are at 3:30. I don't know your particular schedules. So I do have where we can meet a little longer than half hour at 3 that day. If not, I would
Jolie,
only have.
I can't do Thursday afternoons.
Me
No, I
neither.
could only do it if
Yeah.
it was mornings.
me too.
Mornings for me too.
The 11 o'clock works super great, but it doesn't work for everybody. So can we do like
Yeah,
one
Brian's,
at 11?
Brian's schedule is for, I'm pretty much going, looking at Brian's
Sorry, Al.
schedule and
Okay,
giving
Brian.
Hi.
availability on that. So that's not gonna work. Those times are not gonna work. That
What
you're
Yeah, we have-
suggesting.
Brian, we're looking at
The
March
six-
16th, target time of 11, and there's like a problem for you on that. What about if
Yeah.
we did it at 10:30 on the 16th?
I would like to stay away from 9 to 12.
Hey, I
What
can't,
about-
I can't move anything there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not moving. I'm not gonna move anything, Brian. You know, I know your schedule. Like I can't.
yeah.
I only have. Yeah, no. I don't want the. You know, like I'm not trying to be like funny or anything about it.
No,
I
we
just.
understand that. We're all being
Yep. I
practical here.
know. Like the
We're all being
specific things
practical.
I see, chances are like so the specific things I see. What happens is if I go ahead and try to schedule us, chances are we gonna get canceled.
Yeah, no, what about the,
Okay,
what about 12, what about
Tuesday?
12 o'clock then?
I have him for half hour that day. Like we can always have him pop on, and if we need him for a few minutes, and then you guys could go on, I can stay on with you if you'd like to stay on longer than the half hour. So I have him for
Yeah.
half hour that day. But do you guys have, because I know Jen and Susan, I think you just said something about earlier, do you guys have 12
I
available
could do
that day?
12 to 12:30 for that day.
Yep, that's
I
all
can
I
do
have.
12.
Susan? Yeah? All right, everyone, I can do, all right, perfect. For that day at least, right?
Yeah.
Get us in. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's just his schedule is tight around that time, but believe me, I would.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The
so do
other
you
thing
want
I
to
would
then
just
wait-
I would just throw in 2 cents here too. And thank you, Jolie, for
You're welcome.
supporting all of this. Everyone's busy, everyone has schedules. I don't want my schedule to prevent long gaps in you meeting. So, I'm providing perspective here, but this is your group. I'm just here Jolie and I are just here to support and facilitate, not to drive anything, but just to provide more information. So I know, like, as you go through the session and before the end of the session, there may be times where we have to like pop on and maybe the whole
Yeah.
committee can't
Mhm.
meet and those different things. So I like to advise, and Jolie, we know this has worked in the past, of just like having a regular time each week, even if all members can't be on, so that it's like a regular cadence. And like you're saying, Jeff, maybe 2 weeks is okay, but a bill might come out tomorrow that we all need to meet on, and then we don't have a scheduled meeting until the 16th.
Right.
Is that okay? It might be okay,
Yeah.
but this is one of those committees where it's so
Yeah, it is.
challenging to try to.
Well,
I don't want my schedule to hold if the 6 of you could be on a call, but I couldn't, you could still get some very productive work done. And then we can kind of facilitate, but I know Jolie, your schedule is very busy too, and Matt's as well. The other thing I wanted to really double check in on is I know that these are public meetings as the advisory council meets within, but there's also information sharing that's happening in between. So we can work that out. Because
Okay,
it's
so,
not just my schedule, it's also, Matt being able to support Jolie.
As long
Okay,
as I
so-
have them scheduled in advance, I generally would pop on, but we did have a few where Brian, remember last year where we kind of were on our own and we just did our thing? Brian
Yeah.
got us what we needed, and you guys,
You were able to fly from there.
you guys held meetings and we had pretty good meetings.
So, okay, so we got the 16th. Brian was saying something could drop tomorrow. Do you want to do something for the 9th, or do you want to just wait 2 weeks?
Well, the March 16th,
Yeah,
you're saying before the 9th, like, okay, got it. I'm sorry. You're talking about next week. Should we meet before the week of the 13th? You're saying, should we meet?
And what it is putting it on the calendar and not necessarily meeting, always canceling. Do people think that we should put it on the calendar for the 9th?
No, not 9th. Well, I mean, okay, this is gonna be a day Brian would not be available.
Okay, so let's leave it at the 16th then, okay? 'Cause I think we need a little bit more
Sure.
time for stuff to mature. So we'll
Yep.
go with the 16th. What about the 23rd?
Mm, I'm good for the 23rd. And I am good for 11. I know you guys like mornings. Can you guys do 11:30 to 12:15? 12. And would you like me to schedule these meetings for, I think we were good with 45 minutes in the past. After they started to get routine, we were done in 45 minutes. Would you like me to keep that or just leave them for an hour?
Just leave them for an hour just in case, and we could always leave early,
Alright.
so.
Yep.
Jolie, the morning is good. That 10:30 to 11:30 is something that is I don't have to be at
Got it. Okay,
for
guys.
the,
I'm
for the
open to that.
23rd. So the morning is fine for the 23rd.
All right, so we're gonna go to 11 o'clock on the 23rd, right?
Yep, you guys,
Okay.
I know they like the 11 to 12. Okay,
What
give me
about
one
what
moment.
about the 30th?
One moment.
Yep.
Jeff, you guys can decide if yes, but just one moment before I confirm the 30th. But if they got it, I should. Okay.
What, the 30th or the 6th? Are we doing every week or every other?
Anna, we're gonna put them on now, but doesn't
Okay.
necessarily mean that we're gonna be meeting
Got
like
it, got
all
it,
of those
got it.
weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yep, we'll connect
Yep,
that
like
week.
last time, yep.
Yes, yep, we'll connect that week and decide if we're gonna meet. But at
Yep.
least we have them there, and if we need to meet, we can meet.
Yeah, I thought that we were gonna put them every other week and then.
Me
okay.
too. That was me. I confused you with that.
Oh.
I'm the one that said
Oh.
that.
Well, no, we could do that, but I'm just saying, you know what, if we could just all put like a little place marker in
Yep.
our calendar and then always cancel if need
Yeah.
be, so.
Works for
So,
me.
so far,
Are there people that could never that are on our committee that could never meet on this Thursday? Because I know we're missing a few people today.
Rick is good for Thursdays.
Okay.
Lena is new to the group and she's here now. And the Dimpy gets called into meetings. It doesn't matter what, kind of her schedule is just iffy like that. But last year we had
And Doris too is on the.
and Doris, yeah.
yes, yep.
All right, so, we got, so we've got, 16th, 23rd, 30th, and 6th. Okay, do we want to extend it further? Do you want to, how do you want, because it's always better to put a placeholder, then you can always cancel and clear it.
Yeah,
What time on the 6th?
1 second, guys. I'm still on the 30th.
Okay.
I was like, where am I? Almost done. 1 second. Just gotta make sure I don't mess up the boss's schedule, Okay. The 6th. All right, guys. I got you. What? I'm not sure what I just did. Okay.
Now, knowing that the 6th then is, Holy Thursday before Good Friday, I'm assuming places are closed on Friday.
One moment. I decided to change the view of my screen. Okay, 6. The 6 I have. Is Brian still on with us?
Yep.
Yes, Brian. I have the 6. Is it okay? It looks like the same thing that's going on the 9th. The call from 10:30 to 11. Can I go ahead and schedule during that time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Starting first week of April, I'm going to be unavailable until at least 11:30 on Thursdays, starting the month of April. Sorry.
So do you guys want to stick with do you guys want to stay with 11 to 12 so you're consistent, or did you want to do 11:30 to 12:30 on the 6th for Susan's availability? I could do 11:30 to 12:30 if
That's
you
fine.
can. Okay.
That's fine. Okay, so the 6th, 11:30 to 12:30.
And I will get these. I'm just putting the holds now. Then give me by tomorrow, I'll actually get invites out so that we have them on all of our calendars. And then if we're gonna meet that day, I'll get an event an agenda out and post it that week.
Okay, so, do we want to go 13th and 20th, or what do you want to do?
Up to you guys. I
Okay,
can.
let's just put them in the book,
Yeah, I've got his schedule here
and we'll
now.
do 11:30, right?
That was for the 6th. Susan, back when we go back to we're on the second week of April now. Can we go back to 11?
No, it's, I'm from then, for the next.
All of April, let's go to 11:30 to 12:30, guys.
April, May, and June, and part of May I'm in Paris, so.
Do you want to do 11:30 to 12:30 in April, guys?
Could
Yeah.
keep, that would be great, because I could probably
Okay.
do it far and no
Okay.
problem.
Okay, give me a moment.
Sorry, guys, I gotta bounce off.
Bye.
Anna.
Thank you.
All right, well, that takes us through April. Is that good for us now, you think?
I think that's good for now.
All right, let's.
Yeah, and Jeff, if as the chair, if you want to like connect in all, I mean, there's not a huge group here, but we can decide by maybe Tuesday or Wednesday whether or not to cancel or not, to give folks a
Right.
little, a couple days.
Yeah,
Because a lot of these may be, like you said, cancellation, especially on the earlier side. But I think this is better for the group. And if something happens and an individual can't be there or whatever, we'll just continue our communication
yeah,
the
if you
best
could
way
have you
possible.
or Jolie, like on the Tuesday of the meeting week, say to me, look, there's no new developments or something
Yeah.
like that, and then,
Yep.
then we can just say, okay.
Yep.
All right, let's do that. All right, guys.
Perfect.
Thanks for the discussions and all the
Mhm.
work. Really appreciate it. It's going to be busy, a busy few months here until the end of the session, but it's important for the advisory council's voice to be heard and to make sure your perspectives are captured, and bringing attention where the needs are for students with disabilities.
All right, cool. You know what I'll do is I might do a little bit of a write-up of what we talked about today and send it to the executive committee for some of their feedback and information, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. Take
Have a
care.
great
Thank you.
afternoon, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.